I had been trekking through Papua New Guinea's highlands for weeks, pausing in villages to connect with locals and learn Wagamusan. After 3 days in one village, my vocabulary had grown, but I still hesitated to leave until I grasped the verb system better. Then my sat phone rang in the middle of the night, an emergency tone reserved for a select few callers. Groggy, I answered. Henry, it's Taryn. Tim's having a twist. You promised you'd come if it happened. I'll be there. Getting from PNG's highlands to Austin, Texas, where my ex lived with our son, her new husband, and his kids, was no quick trip. It took most of a day just to reach Port Moresby's International Airport. After a few hours' wait, I flew 3 hours to Brisbane, then had a 4-hour layover before a flight to Houston. By the time I arrived in Austin, I'd received worrying texts from Taryn, a brief one from Tim, and a more reassuring message from my niece Emily. She was flying in to help Tim, who'd had his twist during her spring break, so she'd arrive well before me. Emily offered to pick me up, but I declined. I might get restless at night and don't want to rely on anyone for rides, I told her. Once things with Tim settled, I planned to buy a used car and travel the States for a while, but not before helping Tim. After signing for the rental car, I called Taryn. I'll be there in about 30 minutes. We're just finishing dinner, she said. I can warm something up for you. Maybe, or I'll eat on the way. No worries. Actually, Tim would like you to eat here. All right, I'll save my appetite. I'd caught bits of Tim's twist in messages but didn't have a clear picture until after a couple of days in Austin. It made more sense to share my own perspective rather than relay what I'd heard through Taryn and Emily. Traffic was light as I approached the house. I sent Taryn a quick message while waiting at a stoplight nearby, then parked in the driveway. I spotted 2 other cars, probably Emily's and Taryn's, and guessed the third belonged to Douglas. A girl answered the door shortly after I rang. Around 14, with shoulder-length light brown hair tied in a ponytail, blue eyes, and wearing a yellow house dress and blue apron, she looked familiar from a photo Taryn had sent. Tim? Hi, Daddy, she said shyly, unsure if I approved. I pulled her into a hug. It's good to see you, Tim. I'll always be proud to be your dad. Or your daddy. Is it okay if I call you that? Of course. Have you picked a new name yet? No, I'm still thinking. Emily says I should be sure. Your cousin's smart, listen to her. Come in, Henry. Taryn stood in the kitchen doorway but didn't move closer as Tim stepped aside and I entered the living room. She closed the door behind me. Tim's kept a plate warm for you. I didn't put the cake in the oven until after you left the airport, Tim added. It's apple walnut cake. Your grandma's recipe? Yes. I asked her for it when I found out when you'd arrive. Mom and Emily helped, but I did most of it. Was Tim's interest in cooking new after the twist or something picked up since Christmas? I held back the question for now and said, sounds delicious, following them into the kitchen. Tim took charge, heating the plate and setting the table with silverware. Do you want sweet tea? She asked. You know me well, I replied. She poured a glass and placed it beside the plate. I sat down, expecting her to join me, but she started loading dishes into the dishwasher. I'm almost done with this, she said. Tim, try to sit and talk with your father when you finish, Taryn encouraged. I realized Tim was already showing some compulsions since the twist. We can chat while she works if that makes her more comfortable, I said, then caught myself using female pronouns for Tim. Would Tim prefer that? Better to stick to second person for now. Or you can do the talking at first, Tim, since your mom probably doesn't want me talking with my mouth full. Taryn gave a faint smile. So, you want to know about my twist? Tim said, glancing over her shoulder as she loaded the dishwasher. I turned into a girl, and I care a lot about keeping things neat and organized. That's about it. I still like collecting arthropods but haven't had time to go looking. I'd like to keep playing soccer, maybe on a girls' team, but I'm not sure they'll want me since I'm twisted. I'm too busy now anyway, but I'd like to play again, maybe just for fun, not tournaments. I heard TV noises and loud comments from the den, probably Taryn's husband Douglas and stepson Kian watching a basketball game. Then the sound of running water and the bathroom door opening. Emily stepped in. "Uncle Henry," she called, coming into the kitchen. "I won't hug you with your mouth full and wet hands. We need a clean hand towel in the hall bathroom, Aunt Taryn." "Where do you keep them?" "In the hall closet, lower left shelf," Taryn began, but Tim interrupted. "I'll get it," putting a plate in the dishwasher and heading for the hall. "Nope," Emily said. "You sit and visit with your dad. I'll find the towels." Tim hesitated. I said, "I won't mind if you do some housework while I eat. But think about it, you won't know how strong your compulsions really are unless you try to resist sometimes." "The house will still get clean if others help," Emily said. "Sit down." "Okay," Tim said, settling next to me. "Where's your sister?" "Watching the game with the boys?" Skylar was Douglas's daughter, a few months older than Tim, and they got along well. "She's at a friend's for a sleepover," Taryn replied. Tim fiddled with the napkin holder and salt shaker, moving them until perfectly symmetrical. I worried. Beyond any gender confusion, such compulsions could be crippling without a workaround. "What did the doctors say?" I asked. "Our family doctor said I'm a real girl, all girl parts," Tim answered flatly, maybe a bit embarrassed but matter of fact. "But I haven't seen a twist specialist yet." "There aren't any in Austin," Taryn said apologetically. "I plan to take her to Dallas, but it's a long drive, and Douglas or I would have to take work off." "I can do it," I offered. "Would you?" "Thanks. We have a tentative appointment Friday at 1. My boss approved my day off, but he'd be happier if I didn't have to." "I hope to sort things out by then," Tim said. "Can I work on some stuff here while we're visiting?" "I need to wash the windows on the other 3 sides, I did the front today, and finish organizing cabinets and closets, clean the den and bedrooms. If I do all that by Friday, I think I'll be ready to go to Dallas." "I'll help," Emily said, returning with the towels. "I'll help too, maybe with washing the outside windows?" I offered. "Thanks, Daddy." She smiled, but I noticed Taryn biting her lip. "What's wrong?" I asked. When Douglas saw Tim washing the front windows, he told her to stop and that he'd do the outside windows himself. Tim could do the inside ones if she wanted, but he won't have time until Saturday. "Douglas needs to learn to accommodate his stepdaughter's twist," I said, glancing toward the hallway and den where the TV still blared. "Tim, if you feel you can't leave unless the house is in perfect order, is that it?" "Yeah. We'll do our best to get the house ready by Friday, or postpone the appointment if needed. But maybe you should try resisting the compulsion sometimes, not with a long Dallas trip at first, but maybe we could go out for lunch tomorrow during a cleaning break?" She twitched. "I'd rather not, Daddy. I got kind of weird when we went out yesterday." She looked at her mom, and Taryn said, soon after Emily arrived, "We took Tim clothes shopping, but she got so anxious about the house that we had to come back early. We barely bought anything." I swallowed hard. That was bad. "Well," I said, "let's get this place cleaned up." I was about done with my plate, but then decided to carry it over to the dishwasher. I glanced at Tim. Would she be glad someone else was helping, or upset about not doing the cleaning herself? She seemed fine with it. An alarm beeped. "The cake should be ready," Tim said, pulling it from the oven and poking it with a fork. "Mom, can you tell them it's done?" "Daddy, how big a slice do you want?" Taryn smiled and headed toward the den. As Tim served slices of cake, I asked, "How's grad school, Emily? Still keeping up with your Mandarin?" "Yes, Uncle Henry," she replied in Mandarin. "I practice with exchange students, though I'm not currently taking classes." "Good. We'll talk later, just us. I want to hear how you think Tim is adjusting, especially to the gender change. I switched back to English. This cake's really good, Tim. Grandma would be proud. Thanks, she said. It's my first time making it. Ever baked before? She shrugged. I helped Mom bake cookies sometimes, when it was just us. Not often. Taryn returned with Douglas and Kian. Cake, huh? Kian said as Tim offered him a slice. Douglas nodded politely at me. Henry. Douglas, I said. Good to see you. I didn't begrudge him Taryn. We'd been on again, off again after separating and remained friends post-divorce. But with my travel habits, I wasn't the man she needed. I was glad she'd found someone new. I just wished Douglas understood that. How long will you stay? As long as Tim needs me. Maybe a day or two off here and there if I hit the road again. I've got a reservation at the Holiday Inn on Palmer Lane. I'll head there soon. Since Taryn and Tim moved in with Douglas, I'd stayed at a hotel. Their one guest room was Emily's, and staying at the house made me uncomfortable. I'll see you tomorrow after work, then. Enjoy your time with Tim. Douglas took his cake and returned to the den. Kian paused only to compliment Tim on the cake before returning to the game. After everyone got their slices, and Tim set aside a couple labeled "This cake is for Lisa," she finally sat with us and ate. I need to get back to work soon, she said. I'll run the dishwasher after this, then get back to the windows. You need to get to bed soon after your dad goes to his hotel, Taryn said. One more window after dishes, then lights out. Tim sighed. Okay, Mom. Though the cake was delicious and filled me with memories of Mom and Grandma baking, I paced myself to finish at the same time as Tim. Then I took my plate to the dishwasher. What do you want help with? Taryn, can I stay another hour? Sure. Maybe till 10. I've let Tim stay up till midnight on nights without school, but reading or games is one thing, wearing herself out with chores is another. She needs rest. Mom, can we wash the windows in your and Douglas's bedroom? Taryn pursed her lips. You'd better ask him. No, tomorrow while we're at work would be better. He'll probably watch TV for a few hours yet. Okay. What about organizing a closet? Not the hall or bedroom closets. I'm not sure you could finish before bedtime, and leaving piles around overnight would be a pain. How about the cabinets in the living room? Oh, right. Come on, Daddy. Tim grabbed my arm and led me into the living room, where wooden cabinets and shelves stood. Emily followed. The knickknacks looked recently dusted, but when Tim opened a cabinet door, it revealed a jumble of papers, notebooks, envelopes, data cubes, board and card games, and unidentifiable items. How do you want to do this? I asked. Just start pulling stuff out, she said. We'll sort piles on the sofa cushions and chairs, papers there, games there, data cubes there. I'll get some organizer trays. For a few minutes, we sorted quietly, asking where does this go, or what is this? Sometimes Emily asked me the names in Mandarin. After a while, I asked, Tim, how do you feel about all this? Being a girl, for example? Without pausing, she said, being a girl is okay. When I was little and heard about Emily's twist, I was scared. I didn't want to be a girl. But now that it's happened, I wonder what I was afraid of. Emily smiled at her. Have you thought more about a name? Not really. I've been kind of busy. But do you want a girl's name? I asked. And when I talk about you, should I use he or she? I don't want to assume. Yeah, I'm a girl now. I know I need a girl's name. I just haven't decided yet. Mom said you and her never settled on one because you already knew I was a boy by the time names got serious. That's right. Maybe look at your grandmother's and aunt's names: Diane, Karen, Rhoda, Wendy. Emily winced when I mentioned Aunt Wendy, my little sister, who had severe self-injury compulsions worse than Tim's cleaning obsession and had lived in a state hospital for her entire adult life. Maybe not Wendy. Rhoda's a pretty name. I've been leaning toward Elizabeth or Anna, but Emily said it's important to get it right the first time because changing your name is a hassle. Those are good choices. What about your intense focus on keeping things clean? It feels right. Important. Like how you always have to be traveling, right? Shouldn't I be doing this? She paused, looking at me with the most vulnerable expression. I wanted to hug her. After a moment, I did. Sweetheart, you should do what feels important to you, even if others don't care. But don't let one important thing crowd out everything else. Remember when we went to Tritsville last summer? Yeah. I'd picked him up after school ended and we'd taken a road trip around the southeast, never staying more than a night anywhere, until we reached Tritsville, Georgia, where I grew up and most relatives still lived. We stayed there for nearly half the trip, even though I usually hate staying in one spot more than 2 or 3 days. When I got the travel itch, I'd drive a few hours, but I always came back to your Aunt Rhoda's house each night. Yeah. Traveling is important to me, but family is important too. So, I need to learn to pause cleaning when I want to be with family? Or anything else important to you? Yes. Okay, I'll try. She sifted through papers, sorting them into smaller piles. But it's nice when I can do both at once. Definitely. Which pile should Skylar's 4th grade book reports go in? Taryn came in as we neared the end. Tim, it's time for bed. We're almost done, she pleaded. 5 more minutes, Taryn relented. You're doing great, but it doesn't all have to be finished tonight. I picked the living room because you can leave it messy overnight and it won't matter. It seemed they lived mostly in the den, keeping the living room tidy for visitors. There was no big entertainment console, just a few small frames rotating photos of Taryn and Douglas's families. We left several piles spread on the sofa and put other things back in neatly organized trays. I hugged Tim goodnight. What time should I come over tomorrow? 8, maybe 8:30. Just before Douglas and I leave for work. See you then. Emily followed me to the porch. She's really glad you're here. I'm glad to finally be here, I said. I wish I hadn't been so far away when the twist happened, but staying in North America those years, waiting for it, felt too claustrophobic. Don't blame yourself. You've been coming regularly, and I bet you fought your compulsions to be here when you said you would. I nodded. What do you think? How's she really doing? Emily thought for a moment. I don't think she's just putting on a brave face. She's really okay with her new gender. When we went clothes shopping, she didn't resist trying bras or skirts, or insist on buying only jeans like some might. You saw how she dressed just now, that was her choice. But we didn't get to buy much because she got anxious about the housework she hadn't done. What do you think her compulsion focuses on? Did she try to fix anything out of place at the store, the jeans on the skirt rack or the magazines in the doctor's waiting room? She didn't focus on any one thing at the store, Emily explained. She just kept talking about how things back home weren't clean or neat enough. We'd washed and put away all the dishes and clothes before leaving, and Aunt Taryn says the house hasn't been this clean since Douglas hired a cleaning service to get it ready when they were dating. But it's still not enough for her. So it's not a general cleaning compulsion, that's a relief. I sighed. I hope we can help her. Or the doctors can. Do you think they'll put her on anti-compulsion meds, like Ryan? Ryan, my older cousin, had severe compulsions from his twist. Drugs controlled them imperfectly until they stopped working, and he eventually chose risky amateur surgery to suppress them permanently. I don't know. I think the medications have improved since Ryan's time, with fewer side effects. But I doubt they'd use drugs before trying less drastic methods. Like meditation? or hypnosis, or basic techniques. Sometimes you can trick yourself into satisfying compulsions differently, for example, when I walk or drive around for a few hours then return to the same place instead of just drifting off like part of me wants. Or how you manage your socializing compulsion against your studying compulsion to keep both in check. Emily laughed nervously. Speaking of which, I need to study before bed. I should call Vic now. She pulled out her phone and speed dialed, or I'll study until I fall asleep and forget. Good night, Uncle Henry. See you tomorrow. Say hi to Vic for me. Though worried about Tim, I was exhausted after 3 days of travel and fell asleep quickly after checking into my hotel. My twist helps me adjust to new time zones faster than most. While others might take a week crossing 9 zones, including the international dateline, I usually adapt in a day or so. Still, I didn't sleep long. Late afternoon in New Guinea's highlands was early morning in Austin when I woke and couldn't get back to sleep. I got up, worked on a translation job for a couple of hours, then went for a walk around the neighborhood. I choose hotels and safe walking areas at night, before a short nap just before dawn, hoping it would help me settle into local time. I'd called clients to cancel urgent jobs due to family emergency but kept some low-priority translations, including subtitling the latest season of a popular Nigerian video series into Tagalog. After the nap, feeling more grounded, I showered and ate breakfast at a local diner I'd discovered before. Just before 8:30, I headed to Taryn and Douglas's house. Douglas was leaving as I arrived. "Morning, Henry," he said, opening the door. "Tim's in the kitchen. See you tonight, I guess." "I'm off." He passed me and headed to his car. I went through the living room to the kitchen, where Tim and Emily were doing breakfast dishes. "Morning, Uncle Henry," Emily said, drying her hands and hugging me. Tim smiled, but it seemed she struggled to pause her work for the hug. "Morning, sweetie," I said. "Did you sleep well?" Meaning, could she sleep without obsessing over housework? "Yeah, I think so," Tim replied evasively. Emily added, she got a lot done, even if sleep wasn't one of them. I was up a couple hours, Tim protested. Maybe 3. I couldn't sleep either, jet lag. Hopefully tonight's better. Taryn came through, dressed for work. Good, you're here. Amber should be dropping Skylar off any minute, on her way to work. Sorry, I have to rush. Do what you need. Anything I should know? She sighed. Try to keep Tim out of Skylar and Kian's rooms, okay? She shot Tim a stern look. Tim looked sheepish. After Taryn left, I asked, "Who's Amber?" "Where's Kian?" "Why does your mom want me to keep you out of your step-siblings' rooms?" Amber is Skylar's friend Joelle's mom. Skylar spent the night at her house. Kian's still asleep. Anne. I got in trouble for cleaning Skylar's room in the middle of the night. Well, since I was up walking at 3 a.m., I can't complain. She giggled. So, what are today's projects? Washing windows? Yes, and organizing cabinets and closets. After she showed me the cleaning supplies and stepladder, I climbed the ladder on the east side of the house to wash the outside of a living room window. Tim was inside, cleaning the window from that side. Good job, I said. We'd connected on headsets and were able to talk and see each other through the glass as we worked. Thanks, Daddy. We can do the living room and den windows, and Douglas said it's okay to clean the one in his office, but I'm supposed to wait and work with him on the rest in there. I hope I can wait, I don't want to get in trouble again. Just focus on other things that need doing. Isn't there something else just as urgent? Oh, yeah, plenty. Skylar's room still needs work. I kept it until I was sleepy enough to go to bed. Kian's room needs vacuuming and dusting, even though he's not as messy, but I'm supposed to ask their permission before cleaning. The den needs more attention too. I dusted and vacuumed, but want to vacuum under the furniture. Can you help move it? Of course, sweetie. We were working on the den window when a car pulled up. Someone's here, I said, pointing. Want me to say hello? Probably Amber with Skylar. I'll get the door. She gave the window a final scrub, then set down her rag and squeegee. I waved at the car as people got out. Skylar was there, noticeably taller and with new dyed, shorter hair. The black spiky style didn't suit her, but I kept that to myself. Hi, Tim's dad, she said, avoiding the front door and coming around where I stood on the ladder. Tim's got you working too? Is that what she's doing? I said, mock dismayed. And she charged me $25 for washing windows. I should have taken the other guy's offer to whitewash the fence, only 10 cents. Skylar rolled her eyes, the older woman laughed. You must be Tim's father? I'm Amber Yancey, my daughter Joelle goes to school with Tim and Skylar. Is Taryn home? She's at work or on her way. Want me to leave a message? No, I need to get going. Maybe I'll see you again. Got everything out of the car, Skylar? Skylar silently lifted her duffel and nodded. Amber waved and went back to her car just as Tim stepped out the front door. I couldn't see her but heard over the headset. Good morning, Mrs. Yancey. Where's Skylar? Around the side talking to your father. Sorry, I have to run, Amber said, then left. So, what do you think of your new daughter? Skylar asked. I paused, knowing Tim could hear. Tim's a very thoughtful young woman. She set aside 2 slices of cake for you last night. They should still be there even if your dad and brother ate the rest. Tim returned to the window, cracking it open so Skylar could hear. Hi, Skylar. Did you have fun at Joelle's? Yeah. I'll try to convince her to invite you next time, if you want. Tim had resumed scrubbing, and I worked on my side. Thanks. I was too busy this time, but maybe later. Do you think Joelle's okay with Twisted? She thinks Twisted are weird, because, no offense, you kind of are. But she'll invite you if I tell her to. Okay. Well, I'm off to put my stuff away. And don't expect me to spend spring break washing and sorting, even if you got your cousin and dad to help. She grinned and went around to the back door. Tim and I finished the den window and moved to Douglas's office window. I'd just set up the ladder and started spraying cleaner when Skylar's yell came through Tim's phone and the glass. Tim! What did you do to my room? Oops, Tim said. I'll come in and help fix this, I said, climbing down. By the time I reached the office, Skylar was shouting more, apparently grabbing Tim's arms and shaking her before Emily intervened. Emily had been organizing dishes in the kitchen and ran over at the noise. You messed with my stuff. You have no right. I never went through your bugs and underwear. Skylar, I said, have you learned about twist compulsions? She took a deep breath, glaring. We had a unit on Twisted in health class. I looked it up online when Dad started dating Taryn and found out Tim might be twisted. Tim said quietly, I'm sorry. I said I was sorry. It was just so messy I couldn't leave it. I hardly threw anything out, and I didn't really read anything. She can't help it, Emily said. We're trying to help her manage it, but it'll take time. Tim seems compelled to keep things clean and organized, I said. We're figuring it out. But Tim doesn't have to do all the cleaning herself, as long as it gets done, right? Right. So if you clean your own room, then I won't have to, Tim finished. You're not my mom, Skylar said stubbornly. Stay out of my stuff. She stomped off and slammed her door. That could have gone better, Emily sighed. I'm sorry, Tim said, her voice heavy with regret. Don't be so hard on yourself, I said, pulling her into a hug. Just keep working at it. She stayed in my arms a moment longer, sniffing slightly, then asked, Can we wash some more windows? I gave a tired smile. Of course, sweetie. On my way to the front door, I ran into Kian, who'd woken up after the commotion and was heading to the kitchen for a snack. "Oh, hey, Henry. What was all that yelling about?" "Skylar's mad at Tim," Emily added, following me in. "She'll get over it." Kian sounded unfazed, maybe used to sibling spats over trivial stuff at 17. "You gonna be around all day?" "Most likely, unless we can convince Tim to go out to lunch with us. I'm meeting some friends after I eat and clean up. Dad knows, he's cool with it." "I'm not your babysitter, Kian. But just a heads up?" He gave me a wary look. "If there's anything in your room you don't want Tim to see, if she suddenly feels the urge to clean, you might want to take it with you. I'll try to keep her out, but no promises. And if you tidy up a bit before you leave, vacuum the floor maybe, it could help her control the impulse." His eyes widened. "Okay. Oh, and can we wash your window? I'll make sure Tim doesn't mess with anything else." Emily returned to organizing kitchen cabinets while Tim and I tackled the windows. Within a couple of hours, we'd finished all except the inside of Skylar's window. Then we helped Emily wrap up the kitchen, and I moved furniture so Tim could vacuum underneath. We kept at it until lunchtime. "I'm getting hungry," I said as Tim unplugged the vacuum. "How about you?" We just finished the den window, at least as far as I could tell, though I suspected Tim's obsession would find more to clean if not distracted by other messy areas. "I could make sandwiches," she offered. "Unless you want leftovers from last night? There's enough for 2 or 3 servings. Either works." "How about going out?" Her panicked look made me clarify quickly, "Not far, not long. Maybe that taqueria on Metric Boulevard, unless you know something closer. It won't take longer than eating here." "A few minutes longer," she said. "We don't have to if you're not up for it. But I'd like you to try going out for a bit before we spend all day in Dallas." "All right. Maybe." Kian had left for his friends hours ago, and Skylar still hadn't come out since their fight. We grabbed Emily, who'd been sorting clothes from the dryer, and knocked on Skylar's door. "We're going out for tacos. Want to come?" "No," came a muffled reply. "There's cake in the fridge with your name on it," Tim called. Skylar opened the door. "I'm still mad at you, even if you made cake." "I'm sorry." "You should be." "You can go without me," she said, turning to me. "All right. Your brother's gone too, so you'll be alone. We'll lock up." Emily, Tim, and I piled into my rental. Tim seemed okay at first. We talked about what still needed finishing before Friday during the short drive to the taqueria. Inside, we ordered and waited for tacos and enchiladas. But I noticed Tim getting restless, glancing toward the car. "So, I haven't asked yet, what happened when you twisted?" I'd been saving the topic for when she needed a distraction. "Oh," she said, looking at Emily. "It's kind of dumb. I was about to go hang out at Neil's, but Mom said I had to clean my room first, it was such a mess." She looked distressed, and I regretted bringing it up when she was already stressed being away. I complained a lot, and then she said I had to clean the bathroom too, the one I share with Skylar and Kian. So I started cleaning my room, then felt all tingly and passed out. Just then my name was called. We picked up our food. "Do you feel okay eating here? Can we go home now?" We could, but eating tacos here won't get any cleaning done. True. We found a table and sat. Tim ate intently, refusing to talk with her mouth full. Emily and I chatted about my travels, her grad school, her husband Vic's new job. Tim finished first and was eager to leave, so we wrapped up and headed back. "So," I said, starting the car, "back to your twist, what happened when you woke up? How long before you noticed the new compulsions?" "Well, the first thing I really noticed was that I was a girl. Mom found me after the twist, covered me with a blanket since my clothes had burned off, sent everyone else away, and sat beside me until I woke up. When Taryn called me early that morning in PNG, she'd been sitting by Tim's bedside, watching her sleep off the effects of the twist. She'd described the physical changes but wasn't yet sure about the mental shifts Tim might be experiencing. She asked how I felt, and I said being a girl wasn't as strange as I thought it'd be, but I was really anxious about the big hole I'd burned in the carpet. Feeling guilty about the damage? Emily asked. You know, it wasn't your fault. No, it bothered me that the carpet had this huge hole and the area around it was burned. I wanted to fix it but didn't know how. Mom helped me get dressed and wanted me to eat, but when I saw how little cleaning I'd done before passing out, I wanted to finish. So I cleaned until I was too hungry to wait, then ate, and kept cleaning until I finished later that evening. Still, the hole made it look off. Mom and I moved the rug from the den to cover it, which helped, but I'd like new carpet. Douglas says the installers can't come until next week. Dad, can you install carpet? No, sweetie. I've never done it before, and learning now would probably take longer than waiting for pros. I'd picked up many odd skills in my years on the road, but carpet installation wasn't one. What I really wanted was to replace the carpet with tile or laminate, something easier to clean, but Douglas wouldn't allow it. He said one room looking different from the rest would look weird. Would he consider replacing all the carpet with laminate? If cost's an issue, I can help, and maybe we can get a grant from the Nia Clarence Foundation if it's necessary for your twist. Unfortunately, Texas didn't have programs to assist twisted folks with twist-related expenses, at least not when I checked a couple of years ago. That'd be nice, but I'm not sure I could honestly say it's necessary. We'll see. Here we are. Tim hopped out and unlocked the front door almost before Emily and I unbuckled. Inside, she was sweeping the kitchen. Didn't you just sweep yesterday? Emily asked, puzzled and worried. Yeah, but Skylar left crumbs when she made lunch. She finished lunch while we were at the taqueria? Tim blushed. She grabbed her plate and went to her room when she saw me. Guess she didn't want to talk. Then I realized something. Wait, did you know about the crumbs before you got in? Is that why you were so anxious to get home and out of the car so fast? I thought we might have uncovered her trick. Not exactly, but I did get anxious about the kitchen. I didn't realize it was this bad, though. We need to test this, I said. It might be uncomfortable, but how about finishing up here, then going outside with Emily? I'll make a tiny mess somewhere in the house and clean it a few minutes later. You tell Emily if you feel sudden anxiety about a room needing work. Deal? Can we not do that now? Okay, later. But let's try before we see the twist specialists. Okay. She finished sweeping and started wiping the table where Skylar left crumbs and mustard. After the kitchen, we tackled the bathrooms. Emily cleaned the half bath near the kitchen under Tim's direction, while Tim and I worked on the full bathroom she shared with Skylar and Kian. This looks nearly spotless already, I said starting out. Did you clean recently? She nodded, scrubbing the toilet. But Kian's aim isn't great. Until he improves, this toilet needs wiping every day or two, plus the floor. While we're here, disinfect the sink, counter, faucets, and clear hairs from the shower drain. We worked silently for a few minutes, then I asked, you said you were about to visit Neil when the twist happened. Did you ever go or were you too busy cleaning? She sprayed disinfectant on the floor. I was so freaked out by how messy my room was and so focused on cleaning that I forgot I told Neil I'd come over. Mom told me later Neil called while I was unconscious. She told him I wasn't feeling well and would call later. I meant to call right away but got distracted and only called Sunday after Emily arrived and we went shopping. While driving, feeling useless because I couldn't clean, buy clothes, or drive yet, Mom asked if I'd called Neil. I did, and he didn't freak out when I told him I was a girl. He came over after shopping, but didn't stay long and hasn't returned. I think I bored him with cleaning talk or maybe he was weirded out by me being a girl. Neil lived a few blocks southwest and had been Tim's closest friend for the past 2.5 years, ever since his mother married Douglas and they moved into this neighborhood and school district. Tim still kept some online contact with friends from the school he attended when he and Taryn lived in an apartment, at least before his twist, but he was much closer to Neil, who shared many of his interests. On my recent visits, I'd gotten to know Neil's family almost as well as Douglas's, and I'd taken both boys to local parks and the Natural History Museum. Neil had always been a keen observer of nature for his age, but meeting Tim had sparked his interest in collecting insects. Now, though, Tim said she still liked collecting arthropods. He'd broadened his collection over the years, but hadn't found time for the hobby since the twist. If she no longer shared real interests with Neil, keeping the friendship might be pointless. Still, I thought it worth trying. Neil knew you might be twisted. I remember we talked about it on the way to Bee Cave, and I told his parents and grandmother soon after meeting them. Yeah, we talked about it when you weren't around, too. He promised he'd stick by me no matter what, whether I turned into a 6-armed troll, an invisible bank robber, or anything else. I hoped he meant it but wasn't sure. If I ended up like Aunt Wendy, I wouldn't expect him to visit me weekly at the hospital forever. On our last road trip, I took him to visit Aunt Wendy for the first time, not to warn him about what could happen with his twist, but because I thought he was mature enough to meet her without freaking out, and I was right. Have you gone over to his house since your twist? She frowned. I haven't had time. There's so much to do, and you and Mom keep interrupting me to go shopping, see the doctor, or eat lunch. Wait, I need to do something. She tossed away the wipe she'd been using, got up, and squeezed past me by the sink. She knocked on Skylar's door down the hall. I couldn't see her, but I heard. What is it? Skylar called. Finished lunch? What if I have? Can I take your plate to the kitchen? Okay, if you promise to leave me alone after. The door opened. Then Tim said, I think there are crumbs on the carpet. Can I vacuum? No. Leave me alone. The door slammed. I stopped at the sink and stepped into the hall. Tim stared at Skylar's door, then said, That didn't go well. No, it didn't. She put the plate in the dishwasher and returned to the bathroom. Did you actually see crumbs on the carpet? No, I don't think so. But I know they're there. I nodded. Looks like we understand your trick a bit better. Want to test it more? Let me finish here first, she said. After cleaning the bathroom, she wanted to organize closets. We were still working on the hall closet when Taryn came home. I didn't push. Tim was still upset about the fight with Skylar. Mom! Tim said without greeting. Can you get Skylar to vacuum her room or let me do it? She ate in her room, left crumbs, and won't let me. Slow down, Taryn said, putting down her handbag. I want to hear Skylar's side. Henry, do you know what's going on? Skylar got mad when Tim cleaned her room while she was away. She got mad again when Tim figured out about the crumbs on the carpet. I think we've found Tim's trick, though more tests are needed. Wait, what? Is it dangerous? No. She senses when parts of the house get messy and need cleaning. She knew about crumbs on the carpet even though Skylar stayed in her room with the door closed. Are we sure there are really crumbs? Tim, are you just guessing because she ate in her room? I know. I don't know how, I guess it's my trick. Taryn sighed. I'll talk to her and discreetly check around. And I need to start dinner. Oh. Tim said. I should have done that. I can work while you talk to Skylar. Let's work on it together after. Tim gulped. Skylar? Taryn called, knocking. Just a minute. Skylar opened the door. What's up? I hear you and Tim have been fighting. I want to hear your side before deciding. She went through my stuff. When I got home, everything was moved, and I couldn't find anything. I think she was looking at things on my console. No, I wasn't, Tim said. She and I were sorting things from the hall closet into better order. Emily was on a study break. Not now, Tim, Taryn said. Let Skylar finish. You were saying? She messed with my stuff, so I yelled at her when I found out. I told her to stay out, and she said she would, but then she kept bugging me to let her vacuum. She said you were eating in your room? It's hard to relax and eat in the kitchen when she hovers, cleaning as soon as you turn away. Skylar scowled. If you eat in your room, you need to clean up after yourself. Do I have to clean right after every meal? Taryn sighed. We used to let some things slide, let dishes or clothes pile up until the weekend and do vacuuming then. But now we all need to adjust. Tim gets upset when things aren't clean. She can obsessively clean her own room, but it's none of her business how often I clean mine. The crumbs will attract bugs if we don't clean them up soon, Tim fretted, drawing a sharp look from Taryn. Skylar shot back, I thought you liked bugs. Let's not change the subject, Taryn said firmly. Skylar, promise you'll vacuum your room before bed tonight, or let Tim do it now. After a pause, Skylar said, she can do it. But I'll be watching, making sure you don't mess with anything else, she told Tim. Okay, Tim replied. I'll get the vacuum. I finished putting away towels and cleaning supplies from the hall closet just as Douglas arrived home, with Kian not far behind. Emily emerged from her guest room, wrapping up her study break to help set the dining table. Dinner was tense. Skylar glared at Tim, Taryn, and me, having angrily confronted her father, who looked at Taryn and said, let's discuss this after supper. So, Taryn tried, how was your day, Kian? He spoke vaguely about hanging with friends, playing games, and watching movies. Is Tim still keeping you busy? Taryn asked Emily. I feel bad making you work so hard during your visit. It's fine, Emily said. I take breaks as needed. Helping Tim feels good. Uncle Henry helped me a lot after my twist, so I like to pay it forward. Douglas and Kian shifted awkwardly in their seats, briefly exchanging glances with Emily and me before looking down. I want to do something nice before you leave, Taryn continued. I'd say take you to a fancy restaurant, but I'm not sure Tim could handle it. We went out for tacos today, Tim interrupted. Dad wanted me to try going out for a bit, it was okay at first. You'll be gone much longer Friday, Taryn said. Henry, do you think she's ready? She says she can if we get the house clean enough by then. Tonight and tomorrow should be enough time, if Tim isn't doing all the work herself and has enough help. Douglas swallowed and said, I said I'd wash the outside windows this weekend, but... Dad washed them today, Tim said. I did the insides, he did the outsides. Douglas was surprised. Oh. Thanks, Henry. What else needs doing before the clinic Friday morning? The closets, Tim said. The den's closet, and the ones in your bedroom and Kian's. Kian's room's mostly okay, but his closet... My messy closet is the secret to my clean room, Kian said. Don't fix what works. But it's not right, Tim said, frustrated. We need new ground rules, Taryn said, looking pointedly at Douglas. We all need to keep our rooms cleaner and neater to avoid causing Tim unnecessary stress. But Tim, you can't enter others' bedrooms without permission. I know, Tim said, avoiding eye contact. Kian, can you work with Tim on your room after supper? Or would you rather do it yourself? Your father and I will work on our room. Douglas looked like he wanted to object but stayed silent. Kian smirked and said, Okay, Squirt, you can help me. What will you do about Tim going into my room without asking? Skylar asked Taryn. Your father and I will handle that privately, Taryn said, frowning. With permission to help Kian, Tim was eager to finish dinner and didn't waste time talking. After eating, she seemed torn between cleaning Kian's room or clearing the table and doing dishes. Emily noticed and said, go ahead as soon as Kian's done, I'll do the dishes tonight. Are you sure? Go ahead. Kian finished soon after, and he and Tim headed down the hall to his room, chatting about the work ahead. Douglas and Taryn went to their room, Skylar went to hers. Emily and I tackled the dishes, speaking quietly in Mandarin. Do you think we can get the place clean enough to ease Tim's compulsion? She asked. We have to try. It seems less a compulsion to clean and more a compulsion to have her home clean. That fits with how she's okay letting others clean some areas while she handles others. But still, I don't think she's taken much of a break except for eating, sleeping, and the occasional outing like clothes shopping or doctor visits. Maybe it's because the house isn't clean yet. Maybe she'll never be satisfied, always finding ways to improve. Once clutter and dirt are gone, she might start redecorating or renovating. But let's not borrow trouble. Hopefully she'll settle once the house is clean enough. Let's help her get there before Friday morning. After loading the dishwasher, wiping the table, sweeping the floor, and arranging salt shakers and such just how Tim liked, I said, I'm getting restless. I can help more later, but I need a walk now. I should tell Taryn and Tim. Yeah, Tim glanced toward the hall. I approached Taryn and Douglas's door intending to knock but overheard raised voices with phrases like if you hadn't, you can't just, and not her fault. Part of me wanted to eavesdrop but I held back and moved down the hall to Kian's open bedroom door. Tim dusted shelves and the desk with a damp cloth while Kian pulled things from the closet, preparing to reorganize. I need to go for a walk, I said. You know how it is. Tim nodded. Kian looked puzzled. Coming back tonight? Yes, once I satisfy the compulsion, see something new. I'm getting too familiar with this neighborhood, I might have to walk 20 or 30 minutes to find a street I haven't been on. Tim smiled. You could sneak into someone's backyard, you've never been there before. Kian, isn't Enrique's family on vacation this week? Yeah, but, are you serious? No, I said, bad idea. Urban exploring is one thing, abandoned buildings with a buddy and proper gear. But not when people actually live there and just happen to be away. Maybe bringing Tim on that late-night walk around Tritsville wasn't the smartest move. But it had worked out okay, and with how our twist was developing, we probably wouldn't get another chance. I'll help however I can when I get back. Thanks, Daddy. Passing Taryn and Douglas's door, the voices inside were even louder. I decided to leave it for now and talk to Taryn later. If she asked, Emily or Tim could fill her in. Nearly an hour later, I returned to find Douglas hauling a garbage bag to the curb. We should have thrown this out years ago, he said, nodding a greeting. It'd have stayed around another 10 years if your daughter hadn't pushed us. I wouldn't know. I've traveled light since I was a teenager. After my twist, I used to haul a big backpack and duffel full of every possible need. Over time, I learned to improvise and travel with just essentials. When traveling by car, I might pick up more stuff but always shed it before going back to traveling on foot. That's good, I guess. He went inside and I followed. Emily was working on the den closet, Kian and Tim still tackled Kian's bedroom closet. Taryn was cleaning their bedroom, door open. Douglas went in, and I peeked in. I'm back. What next? Actually, Taryn said, I want to talk. Come in and close the door? Douglas looked tense but said nothing. I closed the door. We talked earlier about Tim, how to punish her for cleaning Skylar's room without permission. The usual punishments don't work, Douglas said. No point adding chores when she's already doing more than her share, or grounding her when she doesn't want to go out and stop playing games or watching TV. I suggested stopping her from cleaning, but I wasn't sure, Taryn said. Blocking her compulsion by force might make it worse, right? Yeah, it could. Remember when I told you about that time I was in jail, before I met you? I'd told Taryn but never Douglas, and I wasn't sure she had. His expression said no, and I regretted giving him more ammo against me, but this had to be said. "Yeah," Taryn said softly. "You were pacing the walls after a couple of days, right? You were in jail? What for?" Douglas asked, but I didn't answer. Instead, after 4 days stuck, I was nervous, jumpy, pleading with guards constantly. They nearly sent me to a mental hospital before the Nia Clarence Foundation lawyer got me out. I might have ended worse than Wendy if they had. The lawyer arranged for me to serve the rest of my sentence picking up roadside trash with a locator on my ankle. I recovered eventually, but was twitchy and anxious for months. So that's a no. But if not that, then what? I was at a loss. Taryn and I split when Tim was a toddler, too young to understand complex punishments or their reasons, and I never interfered with how she raised him, especially since I was around only a few weeks a year. When Tim started visiting me, I followed her lead for consistency. "What about cooking?" I asked. "Is that a compulsion or just something she enjoys?" "Not sure," Taryn said. "I don't think it's a compulsion. She didn't object to eating out because she preferred cooking, but because it cut into cleaning time. Try this, don't let her help with breakfast tomorrow. If she handles that without too much anxiety, keep it up for other meals for a few days, however long seems fair for the cleaning she did in Skylar's room without permission." "Something's wrong if you're giving yourself extra work to punish your daughter," Douglas said, more to Taryn than me. "Maybe we'll figure something better," I said, "but that's all I've got now." The next morning, I stopped by the McFarland's house a mile west of my hotel. I remembered the way but didn't have them in my contacts. Luckily, they were home. "Good morning, Layla," I said to the dark-haired woman who answered. "Not sure if you remember me, I'm Henry Harper, Tim's dad." "Oh, yes. You took Neil and Tim to the museum last summer, right? What brings you here?" "I'd like to see Neil, if possible." "Sure, come in and have a seat." She called out, "Neil, someone's here." I sat at the kitchen table. "Can I get you anything?" "A glass of water, thanks." Neil arrived shortly. "Hi, Mr. Harper. Is this about Tim? Is he okay?" "I mean, Tim's dealing with her twist. It's rarely easy, and she's having a harder time than most. Can I ask a favor?" "What is it?" "Keep visiting Tim, even if she seems busy or distracted. Parts of her twist might make her different, but she still needs friends." "Okay," he said. "I'll try. I mean, I'll keep going if she still wants to see me." I think she does. "One more thing, I'm not asking you to keep this secret, but you might decide it's better if she doesn't know I asked you." He was quiet for a moment, processing that. "Yeah, probably." "Mom, can I go see Tim this afternoon?" "Of course, honey. I'll be going then." "Thanks, Neil." "Thanks, Layla." "You're welcome. I hope everything goes well for Tim." From the McFarland's house, I took a short, winding drive northeast to Taryn and Douglas's. I found Tim sweeping pollen off the front porch. "Good morning, Daddy," she said, setting the broom against the porch rail and hugging me. "Mom made pancakes but wouldn't let me help, and she says I can't start cleaning the kitchen until everyone's finished eating." "So you found something else to keep busy?" "Good. Anything I can help with here?" "No, I guess not. Eat first. We can work on Mom and Douglas's bedroom later, they didn't finish it last night, and Mom said I could finish after they leave for work." Inside, Emily, Skylar, and Kian were eating at the dining table. Douglas's car was gone, so I guess Taryn was still getting ready. She appeared from her bedroom with a briefcase. "Good morning," she said. "I'll try to get off early tonight for the last cleaning push." "Sounds good," I replied. "Hopefully most will be done by then." I glanced at Skylar and Kian, they avoided my eyes. Emily nodded enthusiastically. Taryn nodded distractedly and left. I helped myself to pancakes and bacon from the counter and sat down. A few minutes later, Tim came in from the porch. Seeing we weren't finished, she returned to bathroom cleaning. They never stayed clean enough for her. I finished quickly. By then Emily and the others had finished, and Emily was clearing the table. She managed to get Skylar to help, and I joined after my last bite. By the time Tim returned, the table was mostly cleared and the dishwasher nearly loaded. "We're almost done here," Emily said. I added, "Ready to start on your mom's room?" "Sure," Tim said, but added a few more items to the dishwasher before heading down the hall to Taryn and Douglas's room. Kian had vanished into his room after clearing his plate. The room looked clean, though maybe not as tidy as Tim preferred. But Tim's eye was sharper, guided by her twist-driven obsession. "This stuff on Mom's dresser needs better organizing," she fretted. "Loose change isn't sorted, earrings and necklaces are a jumble. We need to dust everything and vacuum the floor. Can you move some furniture so I can vacuum underneath?" "Sure, sweetie. Want me to dust while you organize the dresser?" We finished and began vacuuming when Skylar stuck her head in, raising her voice over the vacuum noise. "Hey Tim, Neil's here." "Oh, hey," I said, feigning surprise. Tim paused the vacuum and said, "Tell him to come in," then resumed. Skylar rolled her eyes and left. Moments later, Neil entered and looked around. "Hi, Tim," he called. "Hi," she replied. "Almost done here, then we can talk." I was moving Taryn's chest of drawers so Tim could vacuum beneath. When done, I asked Neil, "Help me put this back." He nodded and helped. Then we pulled out drawers from Douglas's bureau to move it. Tim switched off the vacuum to help. "So, why's your mom making you clean her room?" Neil asked. "She's not making me, she's letting me," Tim said. "I guess it seems weird," Neil nodded guiltily, but Tim didn't notice, "but I really need the house clean. Mom and Douglas don't have time, so if I want it clean, I have to do some of the work. They did a lot last night but said I could finish today." Once the drawers were on the bed, we moved the bureau aside, Tim vacuumed underneath, then we replaced the drawers. Neil asked, "Have you had time to do anything besides clean since I last saw you?" "Not really. I cooked a little and went to the doctor. Maybe once the house is clean I can do something fun." "I hope so." We had to disassemble the bed to vacuum under it. Neil and I moved the mattress to the hall, detached the headboard and footboard, and shifted them while Tim moved boxes stored under the bed. Finally, Tim vacuumed. When the conversation lagged, I asked Neil about his recent activities and insect collecting, which revived their talk. I was glad Tim could still find interest in insects even if she wasn't hunting for specimens. After vacuuming, we took a lunch break. Tim wanted to make grilled cheese sandwiches, but I reminded her, Mom said no cooking for 3 days. "Grilling isn't cooking," she argued, pouting almost enough to convince me. But I held firm. "You can grill or toast your own sandwich, but Neil, Emily, and I will make ours. You can cook for Neil when your punishment's over." "What are you being punished for?" Neil asked as I left for the restroom. Tim started explaining, but I closed the door. When I returned, they were talking about other things. After lunch, I suggested testing her trick some more. She hesitated. "You have a trick?" Neil asked. "What can you do?" She glanced down at the dishwasher, loading her plate and Neil's. "It's pretty lame, not like Dad's tricks or Aunt Rhoda's. I kind of just know when the house needs cleaning and where the mess is." "Oh." Neil went quiet. "Or at least that's what we think," I said. "We need to test it. If we're right, the Twist Clinic folks can't really help with testing, though they might suggest ideas. I'm sure Skylar will test it for me soon enough, whether I want her to or not," Tim said sourly, dampening a paper towel and wiping the counter where we made sandwiches. "The house is messy enough without making a deliberate mess to test my trick." Neil looked around the spotless kitchen, then at me. I shrugged. Just a small mess we can clean up quickly, I urged. All right, she said after a pause. What do you want to do? Minutes later, Tim and Neil went out to the backyard with Emily following. I waited, then went into the living room, pulled 4 or 5 pieces of scrap paper from the trash, and scattered them on the floor. Then I stepped onto the back porch. Tim was already climbing the back steps as I came out. Neil followed. The living room, she said. There's something on the floor that shouldn't be. Bingo, I said. You relax and visit with Neil some more. I'll clean up my mess. I want to get back to Mom and Dad's room, she said. I need to finish before they get home, and then we have to clean the basement. Maybe then I'll be able to leave the house long enough to go to the clinic. All right, I said. I'll join you shortly. I returned the trash to the bin and went back to Taryn and Douglas's bedroom, where Tim was straightening the dresser tops that had shifted when we moved furniture. Neil dusted books and knickknacks on the shelves. Anything else I can help with? Maybe not, we're almost done. Could you start a load of laundry? There are several things in the bathroom hampers. And ask Skylar if she has anything to wash. I don't think she wants to talk to me. Okay. I gathered all the dirty clothes and towels I could find and went to the basement to wash them. It wasn't a full load. Someone, I guessed who, had done laundry a few days ago. Tim and Neil came downstairs while I worked. The upstairs is mostly done, Tim said. Except the window in Skylar's room. And I should give the toilets another scrub tomorrow morning before we leave for the clinic. Now it's just this area. I looked around the half-basement. It wasn't dirty or dusty. Tim had probably swept or mopped since the twist, but it was cluttered. Well, I said, let's see how much we can get done. Do you think you can go to the clinic if the basement isn't perfect? Tim scowled. Maybe. I don't think so. Then let's get started. Neil helped us for hours, and Emily joined after her post-lunch study break. Around 5 or 5:30, shortly before Taryn got home, Neil's mom called for him to come home for supper, so he left. Thanks for coming to help, Tim said. I really appreciate it. No problem, he said. I hope next time we do something more fun, but if you need help, I'm there. They stood awkwardly for a moment while I sorted old magazines by title and date. Neil then went upstairs to leave. Neil's a good friend, I said after he'd gone. Not many guys would spend a whole day of spring break helping a friend clean. I know, she said. I didn't want to spend the day cleaning when Neil was here, but I couldn't help it. So much to do before tomorrow morning. What time do we have to leave? It's about 3 hours to Dallas, and your appointment's at 1, so let's plan to leave by 9:30 in case of traffic. Tim nodded. We kept working as Taryn and Douglas returned from work. Taryn stopped to talk briefly, then sent Kian and Douglas to help while she fixed supper. It was well-meaning, but 5 people trying to work in a small space wasn't efficient, so we sent Kian and Douglas back upstairs to Douglas's office. We continued until Taryn called us to supper and returned to work on the basement afterward. Tim debated between doing dishes or finishing the basement, but Emily volunteered to do the dishes, and Taryn told Kian to help. Around 10, Taryn came down. Tim, time for bed. We're almost done, Tim pleaded. I have to finish or I can't leave tomorrow. You need rest. You've worked non-stop. Don't wear yourself out. I can nap in the car on the way to the clinic. Taryn relented. All right. Henry, what about you? You're driving and working hard too. I should head back to my hotel soon. Another hour, maybe. Think we can finish by then, Tim? I hope so. When I left, Tim and Douglas were still tidying the basement's last details. I arrived at Taryn and Douglas's house just after 8 the next morning, before they'd left for work but after they'd showered. Good morning, I said as Skylar let me in. Where's Tim? Cleaning Dad and Taryn's bathroom, she replied, rolling her eyes. Didn't she just clean it yesterday? Be patient with her, I said, heading down the hall to their bedroom. Knock knock? Doors open, Tim called, and I went inside. The bathroom door was open too, and Tim was on her knees scrubbing the underside of the toilet seat. Anything I can help with? You could take those towels to the washing machine, she said thoughtfully, but I guess you don't have to. They've only been used once. I'll do it if it helps you feel better about the trip. Okay, thanks. Can you grab Mom and Douglas's dirty underwear from the hamper too? I already took mine and my towel downstairs after my shower. Once I'd taken care of that, I went to the kitchen and greeted Taryn, Douglas, and Emily, who were all eating breakfast. Tim joined us while we chatted. Okay, she said, taking a deep breath, I think I'm ready to go. As soon as the breakfast dishes are washed up, she added nervously, glancing around. We'll load the dishwasher before leaving, Taryn said, exchanging a meaningful look with Douglas, who nodded with his mouth full. And I'll wipe down the table and counters, Emily added. You rest, you've been working too hard and have a long day ahead. Tim sat next to me and we chatted while I ate a bite. But as soon as Douglas put his plate and utensils in the dishwasher and left for work, Tim suddenly said, "Oh, I just thought of something," jumped up, and ran out. Moments later she returned with a mop and insisted on mopping the floor before we left. Taryn left for work a few minutes later. Give me a call at work if the doctors say anything new, okay? She said quietly while Tim mopped. Will do. Have a good day. You too. She paused to hug Tim and whisper something before leaving. Emily and I wiped down counters and the table as Tim finished mopping. When we finished, I asked Tim, "Are you sure there's nothing else to do before we leave?" We still have half an hour. If we leave now and traffic's good, maybe we can have a sit-down lunch instead of fast food. Tim looked around, peeking into the den and her mom's bedroom, then glanced down the hall toward Skylar's room, where she had disappeared after putting her plate in the dishwasher. I guess it's all pretty much clean, she said, sounding surprised. For now. Let's hope it stays that way a while. I knocked on Kian's door. He'd been sleeping late, but answered. What's up? We're getting ready to leave, I said, opening the door slightly. You and Skylar will be on your own for a few hours. Your parents may get home before we do. Okay. Be sure to clean up after lunch, and make sure Skylar does. All right. A few minutes later we were on the road. It was a good thing too. After 4 days in Austin, I'd have needed a drive soon anyway if not for Tim's clinic visit. The interstate between Austin and Dallas wasn't the most exciting road, but it wasn't dull, and it satisfied my need to be moving. Once in Dallas, I detoured a bit off the GPS route to satisfy my urge to explore new places. Tim sat beside me. Emily took the seat behind, where she could lean over to chat with Tim more easily. After Tim woke from her nap, Emily asked, "Have you thought more about your new name?" A little, Tim said. I was thinking about Marissa, but now I'm unsure. Maybe Caitlin or Amanda, or after Aunt Rhoda, like Dad suggested. Any of those would be good, I said. Think on it some more. If you decide before we get to the clinic, we can check you in under the new name. No pressure, they can use your old name and update records later. I'll try to decide before then, she said quietly. Emily settled back to study, and I kept my eyes on the road. Tim browsed baby name sites on her tablet, occasionally sharing. How about Renata or Renee? Both mean reborn. Either suits you, I said. I think Renata sounds more distinctive. Emily looked up from her book. Were you talking to me? Just thinking out loud, Tim said. Name origins aren't as helpful as I hoped. Half the names mean good or pretty. That's fine for parents naming a newborn, but it'd be arrogant for me to call myself Agatha or Jolie. Not that I like Agatha anyway. You could pick a name just based on how it sounds, Emily suggested. That's how most parents do it. How did you pick Emily? Actually, from a dream I had a few days after my twist. Oh. I haven't dreamed lately. Or at least I don't remember. As we entered Dallas suburbs, Tim finally said, "Okay, I think I've got it. Tessa means bee, which connects to my arthropod collection, and it's related to Mom's name, which is nice. And bees work hard, just like you," Emily added. "And it sounds pretty," I said. "That's Greek, right? Probably related to honey, too." "Let me check," Emily said, quiet for a moment, then, "it means honey as well." "That might be confusing, same word for honey and bee." "Context," I said. "You wouldn't ask a waiter for a jar of bees or tell a doctor you got stung by honey." My Greek was rusty from years away, and bees or honey never came up. But I'd seen many examples of words Americans think are ambiguous but aren't. We arrived in Dallas with plenty of time before Tessa's appointment, so after exploring the neighborhood around the clinic and debating our tastes, we had lunch at a Cambodian restaurant. Tessa said she hadn't had Cambodian food since our road trip last summer and wanted to try it again. Emily wasn't as enthusiastic but found something she liked well enough. Then we headed to the clinic, just a couple of blocks north. Emily and Tessa found seats while I checked Tessa in. Taryn had given me her insurance cards and a letter for the clinic. "I'm here with my daughter, Timothy Darren Harper. She just went through her twist. We have an appointment at 1?" The receptionist looked her up on the computer. "Yes. Have a seat, a nurse will call you shortly. We haven't filed the official name change paperwork yet, but she's going by Tessa now, you might want to note that." "Got it," the receptionist said, unfazed. "I'm not sure how many twisted individuals change gender, maybe 1 or 2%, but she clearly had experience with cases like Tessa's." I sat beside Tessa and asked, "Have you thought about a middle name yet?" She groaned. "You mean I have to go through that again?" "Don't stress over it," Emily said. "You don't even have to have a middle name. Not everyone does. But it might be useful sometimes." "I'll think about it." "Good," I said. "And what about this clinic visit? Do you want me to come with you for all of it, or just part?" "I expect they'll want some private time with the psychologist, but for the rest, you can have me or Emily if you want." She thought for a moment. "I want you with me for everything except the psychologist and the physical exam." "Do you want me there for the physical?" Emily asked. Maybe not. A nurse called us in a few minutes. Emily stayed in the waiting room while Tessa and I followed the nurse to an exam room. "Your father can wait here," the nurse said to Tessa. "Come with me for imaging and blood tests." "Have fun," I said. They returned about 10 minutes later, and the nurse began asking questions about Tessa's twist. Tessa explained how it happened, her compulsions, and changes in habits. I shared what I'd observed and told her about our impromptu test. The nurse said after hearing about the test and Tessa's description of her feelings when I scattered paper on the floor or when Skylar dropped crumbs. "I'm not sure how to classify that," she typed on her console. "You'll need to talk to the thaumatologist about it." "Sure." The nurse then had Tessa take psychological tests on the computer while I returned to the waiting room. After over an hour, she called me back. "I don't remember the tests taking that long," I said, entering the exam room. "But that was a long time ago." "They finished a while ago," Tessa said, "but then the psychologist, Dr. Schaefer, talked to me. He said he'd be back to speak with you." "All right. What did you think of him?" "He seemed okay. He asked how I felt about being a girl and about wanting to keep the house very clean." "Did he offer advice on managing your compulsions?" "Not much. He said he'd talk more when he returned." Dr. Schaefer arrived shortly after. We shook hands. "You're Tessa's father?" "Yes. She lives with her mother, and I visit when I can. I'm taking her because my schedule is more flexible than Taryn's." "I see. I'm glad to meet you, but I'll also need to speak with Tessa's mother, since she's the custodial parent." I'm concerned about Tessa's compulsion to keep her home spotless. So am I. I was hoping you'd have advice on managing or working around it. I'm afraid there are no easy answers. I have ideas, but you, or Tessa's mother, may not like them. Go ahead. Tessa is fixated on having the entire house clean. But she doesn't seem to transfer that compulsion elsewhere, at least not yet. We need to find out if she permanently imprinted on this house when she twisted, or if the compulsion would move with her to another place. If so, how long might it take for a new home to feel right enough that she no longer feels the need to keep the old one clean? Do you think we should move? Tessa asked, glancing at me. Douglas wouldn't like that. That's something we need to figure out eventually. I'm not sure it has to be done before college. Maybe renting an apartment for the summer between high school and college could test whether she can live in a dorm or would need to keep returning home to clean. What I have in mind, Dr. Schaefer continued, and this might not be feasible for many reasons, is that if Tessa lived in a smaller home, like an apartment with less furniture and fewer possessions, she could keep it clean with far fewer hours of work each week. That would leave her more time for school and enjoyable activities. From what she said about the week since her twist, I'm worried she won't do well in school if she's compelled to spend every moment at home cleaning. What do you think, Tessa? She shrank back in her chair. I don't want Mom and Douglas to give up a lot so we can move to a small apartment. Skylar and Kian wouldn't stand for it even if Mom convinced Douglas. Never mind if it's doable now or not, I said. We can figure that out later. First, do you think Dr. Schaefer's right? Would a smaller home with less furniture mean less cleaning, and is that something you'd want? Maybe. Cleaning isn't a hardship anymore, it's something I enjoy, but I'd like time for other things too. I turned to Dr. Schaefer. We think her compulsion is about having the house clean, not necessarily doing the cleaning herself. Would you agree? That seems to fit what I've heard. Of course, you're better positioned to say. Maybe we can bring in a cleaning service to give Tessa some relief. Try that and see how much it helps, Dr. Schaefer agreed. I realize moving, even temporarily, can be difficult, but I think it's important to test how strongly Tessa is attached to this particular house well before she reaches college age. I said. Maybe we could rent a beach house or a mountain cabin for a couple of weeks this summer? 2 weeks might be enough time for Tessa to shift her focus from keeping Douglas and Taryn's house spotless to maintaining the cabin. Tessa looked anxious. Could you stay in a place for 2 weeks straight? I have a travel compulsion, I explained to the doctor. It's hard for me to stay put more than 2 or 3 days. I manage by taking breaks to travel for a few hours and then returning. If the cabin is small and has little furniture, I told Tessa, we could clean it thoroughly, then take road trips or hikes every few days and return in the evenings. Let's try that, she smiled. Dr. Schaefer cleared his throat. Aside from this compulsion, your daughter seems to be adjusting well to her twist, especially her gender change. From a short interview, it appears she has fully embraced her gender identity, not just a biological change, which is less common and can be challenging. Tell me about it, I said. My niece had the opposite, a gender identity shift without biological change. It was rough at first, but she's doing okay now. She's helped me a lot, Tessa said. That's good, Dr. Schaefer replied. Has she connected you with others like yourself? She gave me a forum address, but I haven't had time to join or read much, too busy. Well, hopefully that changes once we get a handle on your compulsions. The easiest way to control them is, as I said, to reduce their scope by living in a smaller home with less furniture and clutter. If that's not feasible, and your compulsions seriously interfere with your life, like school, we do have medications that might help control them. I hope you'd only use those as a last resort, I said, concerned. Wouldn't those drugs risk impairing Tessa's focus on school as much as, or more than, the compulsions? Not necessarily. Which drugs do you mean? I don't recall the names, but a cousin of mine had severe compulsions treated with drugs that caused him to fail classes and drop out of college. He still isn't allowed to drive because of side effects. Was this recent? No, it was nearly 30 years ago, when I was in middle school. We have better drugs now, not perfect, but we reserve them for when other methods fail. Side effects are less severe than what your cousin experienced. I wasn't fully convinced and resolved to research current medications for twist compulsions. What about other methods? I asked. Some twisted individuals manage their compulsions with meditation. It didn't work well for me, but maybe Tessa could benefit. That's possible, Dr. Schaefer acknowledged. It takes time to learn, and many twisted don't get much benefit from it. If Tessa's compulsions seriously disrupt her schooling, we might try medication first, alongside meditation or self-hypnosis training. Worst case, she could fail a grade while learning to manage her compulsions this way. Let's see how things go, I said. A few minutes later, Dr. Schaefer left. I pulled up my tablet and checked his profile on the clinic's website. He wasn't a full-time twist specialist, he worked at the clinic on Fridays and saw general psychology patients the rest of the week. That lessened my confidence in him and the Dallas clinic overall. Apparently, Texas didn't have enough twisted patients to support a full-time clinic with comprehensive specialists like those in Spiral, Atlanta, or Chicago. I didn't share my concerns with Tessa though. She was stuck with him for now, and undermining her trust wouldn't help unless I had serious warnings. So far, the only issue I saw was that he seemed a bit quick to prescribe medication. I wondered what their trick specialist did on non-twist days. Soon after, a tall Hispanic woman entered and introduced herself as Dr. Martinez. I'm a thaumatologist, she said, specializing in the unique compulsions some twisted have. Ms. Varney told me you've discovered your trick, Tessa? Yeah, it's kind of lame. I just know when something's out of place and needs cleaning, even if I can't see it. Can you explain more? We described the tests we'd done. Fascinating. Have you felt this sensation anywhere besides your home? I think I might have felt it at the taqueria on Wednesday, but I'm not sure. Maybe it was just general anxiety about the house not being clean enough yet. But when I got home and we were sitting in the driveway, I definitely felt like the kitchen needed work, and I saw what was wrong as soon as I walked in. Have you ever felt that feeling at other places you've visited? Like maybe the kitchen or bathroom at the restaurant wasn't clean enough, or something was off here at the clinic, or anywhere else? No, only at home. I see. So this ties into your compulsion. Your home is the only place where you feel the need to keep things clean? That's right. Fascinating. I don't think I've ever encountered a trick like yours, a sensory trick focused on one specific place, though I've read about one or two similar cases. For example, a boy who could read the emotions of his family members but no one else. Since your home is 200 miles from the clinic, further testing might be tricky, but, she paused, then asked, Mr. Harper, may I speak with you privately for a moment? Sure, I said uncertainly, glancing at Tessa, and followed Dr. Martinez out of the room. Is anyone home at Tessa's mother and stepfather's house? Her step-siblings, Skylar and Kian, were home when we left, but they may have gone out. I could call to check. I think I know where you're going with this. Yes, I want their help to test Tessa's trick if they're home. Will it still work when she's hundreds of miles away? I called Skylar and got her on the line. Hello? Hi Skylar, it's Henry. Remember how a couple of days ago Tessa somehow knew you had crumbs on the carpet? By the way, Tim's decided on a new name, she's going by Tessa now. What is it this time? She burst out. I swear I cleaned everything after lunch, and I haven't done anything else for Tim to complain about. No, don't worry, you haven't done anything wrong. Tessa hasn't felt like something's wrong at home. We'd just like your help testing her trick at this distance. Pick a room at random, dump some waste paper on the floor, then 10 minutes later clean it up. We'll see if Tessa can sense it. Oh, okay. How about the den? That's perfect. Just message me after you clean it up, okay? Sure. Thanks. Bye. I hung up and rejoined Tessa and Dr. Martinez in the exam room. I'd like to suggest some other tests you can try at home, Dr. Martinez said, not mentioning my call to Skylar. Your earlier tests involved crumbs on the floor in one room and waste paper in another, correct? Yes, Tessa said. Though the first wasn't really a test, it's just how we discovered I had a trick. Let's try tiny amounts of other debris, a single breadcrumb on the kitchen floor or counter, for example. And we can introduce small disorder to your organized collections, maybe put a whisk in the knife drawer or a pillowcase in the towel closet. While Dr. Martinez spoke, Tessa started fidgeting, seeming distracted. Are you okay, honey? I asked. Yeah, it's just, I think Skylar or Kian must have dropped or spilled something in the den. Her eyes widened. Did you tell them to do it? Yes, I admitted. Don't worry, she'll clean it up soon. Okay. I guess. What were you saying, doctor? Dr. Martinez continued describing the tests, but Tessa couldn't focus until Skylar cleaned up her mess minutes later. Well, Dr. Martinez said, we know your trick works from 200 miles away. Next time you travel, if someone you trust stays at home, or you have a neighbor with a key, you should test it over longer distances to find the range. Meanwhile, try the other tests I suggested. What about getting her trick and compulsion to focus on a different place? I asked. Like a vacation cabin, apartment, or dorm room. That's something you should test when possible, she replied. I don't expect you can do it immediately. Do you have advice on how to shift her trick to focus on where she lives, permanently or temporarily, instead of where she lived when she twisted? No, I'm not sure. It might depend on where Tessa considers home. I recall when I moved out of my parents' house, it took a while before it felt like home. For me, it wasn't until my third year of college, when I had my own apartment, that the feeling settled. Oh, Tessa said. Thanks anyway. Maybe meditation can help, I said. I'm not the one to teach you, I've tried but lack the patience, but I'm sure your mother or I can find someone local. That's a good idea, Dr. Martinez agreed. Any other questions? Tessa and I exchanged glances. You said this was a new sense, Tessa began, like seeing or hearing? Could I learn to close my eyes or cover my ears so I don't notice when the house gets messy? Perhaps, Dr. Martinez replied. Most sensory tricks are always on by default and don't come with eyelids, but it's worth trying. Close your eyes and imagine looking down at your house through transparent walls. Everything inside is in place, just as it should be. Relax and keep that image for a moment. Now imagine you have a second set of eyelids, close them and the house isn't transparent anymore. A third set, close them and you can't see the house at all. Tessa leaned back with her eyes closed. Dr. Martinez motioned me out into the hall, and we quietly left the room. Call your stepdaughter again and have her create a small mess like before, she whispered. I messaged Skylar and Kian instead of calling, then returned to Tessa. She sat quietly for a while, with Dr. Martinez and I careful not to disturb her. I watched her from the corner of my eye. Eventually, Tessa started fidgeting, squirmed a bit, and opened her eyes. It didn't work, she said. It's not like I'm actually seeing the mess Skylar made, it's more like her room is an extra limb that suddenly started itching. Interesting, Dr. Martinez noted, taking notes on her tablet. Don't give up after one try. Keep practicing that exercise at home, especially once you start learning meditation and self-hypnosis. Feel free to adjust it to fit how you experience your new sense, maybe imagine your extra limbs and the room's going to sleep. I'll try that. Thanks. If you don't have more questions, I have one for you. Would you be interested in joining a study? It would involve coming back to the clinic once or twice over the next few months and performing your trick while under a specialized scanner. We can't do it today, I need to schedule the equipment in advance. I'll discuss it with Tessa's mother, I said. Can you send me the study details? Of course. And please keep me updated on Tessa's progress controlling her trick. Anything else? If not, I'll leave you for now. Someone else will be with you shortly. Later, Mr. Isherwood, the social worker, came in. After delicately asking about mine and Taryn's income, I had to guess Taryn's. He advised applying for a grant from the Nia Clarence Foundation to help cover Tessa's new wardrobe and any home renovations needed for her twist compulsion. Then we left the clinic, rejoined Emily in the waiting room, and headed back to my rental car. During the last half hour of our drive home, Tessa grew restless. Someone's making a mess in Mom and Douglas's bedroom, she said. Probably Douglas. We'll tell him to clean it up when we get home, I said. Try practicing that exercise Dr. Martinez gave you. Pretend your leg is falling asleep, and that leg is the bedroom, so you can't feel it anymore. I'll try. But even with her eyes closed, she kept fidgeting and shifting. It turned out Douglas had tossed his work clothes over a chair instead of putting them away properly after work. Tessa didn't wait or ask him to clean it up. She went in and tidied the mess while he watched TV in the den, before greeting her mother and anyone else. She came into the kitchen and said hi to Taryn and Skylar, who were preparing supper. Emily and I had just arrived too. I called Taryn on the way home, sharing some of what the doctors said and mentioning Tessa's new name. She said, "Hi, Tessa. Did you have a good day?" "It was okay," Tessa replied. "The doctors had some ideas about managing my compulsion, but it's going to be tough. Your father told me some of that on the phone. Let's talk more during supper." "Can I help?" "No. Not until Sunday." Skylar smirked at Tessa behind Taryn's back. I considered saying something but didn't. Emily disappeared to study in her room. She'd been talking with Tessa and me most of the way back, as we tried to figure out how to implement Dr. Schaefer's suggestions without too much disruption to Taryn and Douglas's lives, and whether to allow Dr. Schaefer to prescribe medication for Tessa's compulsions. Emily was firmly against it, and I wasn't keen either, though I wanted to research more before discussing it with Taryn. Tessa and I tried some of the trick tests Dr. Martinez suggested. She went to her room while I went down to the basement, took a magazine from a sorted stack, and placed it slightly out of order in another stack for easy retrieval. Tessa joined moments later, pointed at the stacks, and I put the misplaced magazine back. "So it works on minor disorder, not just trash and dirt," I said. "Good to know." "Right," she said, turning to head upstairs. "Mom said supper's almost ready, but I think I have time to scrub the toilets." "All ready?" She shrugged. "They've been used several times since this morning. And Kian has terrible aim." During supper, Taryn asked Tessa and me to discuss Dr. Schaefer's suggestions for managing her compulsion. Well, Tessa started, looking to me for support, so I decided to take the lead. "He had a couple of ideas," I said. "We could hire a cleaning service so Tessa doesn't have to do so much herself. I can help arrange that, and maybe the Nia Clarence Foundation could assist financially if needed. Another option is moving to a smaller place, or keeping this house but decluttering to reduce what needs cleaning." Douglas looked surprised. Apparently Taryn hadn't shared what I'd told her over the phone. Great, now I was the bearer of bad news. He stayed quiet for a moment, clearly unhappy, which I understood. Skylar, however, spoke up immediately. "That's ridiculous. Why should we move out or get rid of things just because Tim is obsessed with cleanliness?" "My name's Tessa now," she said softly. "I don't think moving is necessary," Douglas replied. "Let's try the cleaning service first. And I suppose we could all declutter a bit. I've already started, and maybe do more. We don't need to move." "I don't like the idea," Kian said, "but if Tessa really needs it, I'm okay with it. I'll be moving out soon anyway. Once I'm at college, you won't need as many bedrooms." Having lived for so many years with only what I could carry, I found it hard to relate to their attachment to the house and belongings, but I tried. Skylar and Kian had lived here most of their lives. Their memories were tied to this place, to their mother. "You should keep the possibility in mind and try to get used to it," I said. "But it may not be necessary." We need to try other things first, the cleaning service, obviously, and also find someone to teach Tessa meditation and self-hypnosis. Maybe that can help control or redirect her compulsions, so she only feels the need to keep her own room clean rather than the whole house. But Dr. Schaefer said meditation takes a long time to learn well enough to control a twist compulsion, Tessa said. And many people can't control theirs that way. Most, I think. That's true. But it's still worth trying first, even if it's unlikely, because it has the fewest downsides. We'll start looking for someone to teach you on Monday, Taryn said. Later that evening, I asked to speak privately with Taryn, and possibly Douglas. A few minutes later, I was in Douglas's office with both of them. There weren't enough chairs for all of us, so Taryn offered me one, but I stayed standing. There's another thing Dr. Schaefer mentioned you should know about, I said. It's a last resort, something to consider only if meditation and downsizing don't help, prescription drugs to control twist compulsions. Why are drugs a last resort compared to moving to a smaller home? Douglas asked. Seems simpler. Because of the side effects, I explained, then told them about Ryan. The latest twist compulsion medications are supposed to have fewer side effects, but Ryan still can't drive or operate machinery because of his meds. That's not good, Taryn said. Though not being able to drive seems less disabling than some compulsions, like Tessa's. She's too young to drive anyway, Douglas added. And Austin has decent public transit for when she's older. Not being able to drive is just one example, I said. There might be other side effects I can't recall right now. We should research any drug regimens Dr. Schaefer recommends before accepting them. And let's not try meds until Tessa has tried meditation for several months and hasn't made enough progress. They exchanged looks. I'll think about it and do some research, Taryn said. Let me know if you find out anything new, okay? Sure. The next day, Saturday, Emily had to fly back to Atlanta. I arrived at Taryn and Douglas's house in time to see her off. She left soon after breakfast. Tell Vic I said hi, I told her and gave her a hug. I might visit sometime in the next month or two if it works out. That'd be great. Call us when you're heading to Atlanta. She turned to Tessa. It's been a fun visit. Wish I could stay for the shopping trip, but airplanes wait for no one. They hugged, and Emily whispered something that made Tessa smile. After Emily left, Tessa said she needed to finish cleaning before going shopping. So we scrubbed toilets again, cleared hairs from bathtub drains, swept the kitchen, wiped counters and table, and loaded and ran the dishwasher with breakfast dishes. Then Tessa, Taryn, and Skylar went shopping. I offered to help carry packages, but they declined, which was a relief. See you later this evening, I said and left around the same time, taking a long drive through several small towns north and west of Austin, stopping for barbecue lunch and a walk in a park I found. I returned home around supper time, after calling Tessa to confirm they'd arrived safely. After supper, Tessa showed me some of her new purchases and modeled several outfits while I made appreciative sounds. I was glad she'd adjusted so smoothly to being a girl. She had enough to deal with already, just with her compulsion. Sunday morning, Tessa had some basic cleaning to do, and Taryn and I helped out. I began to feel more hopeful about her chances in school if she could keep the house clean with just an hour or two of daily effort. Then Douglas, Kian, and I moved some of Tessa's belongings to the guest bedroom and the rest to the basement, preparing for the carpet installers to replace the carpet in her room, burned by her twist. The work was scheduled for Monday while everyone was at work or school. I tried to convince Douglas to let Tessa have laminate flooring instead of carpet, but he was firm that it had to match the rest of the house. Twisted or not, obsessions come in all forms. Already? She shrugged. They've been used several times since this morning. And Kian has terrible aim. During dinner, Taryn asked Tessa and me to talk about what Dr. Schaefer had said regarding how to manage her compulsion. Well, Tessa started, looking to me for support, so I decided to take the lead. He offered a couple of ideas, I said. We could hire a cleaning service so Tessa doesn't have to handle so much of the cleaning herself. I can help arrange that, and maybe the Nia Clarence Foundation could assist financially if needed. Another option is moving to a smaller home, or keeping this house but getting rid of some things so there's less to clean and organize. Douglas looked surprised. Apparently Taryn hadn't shared what I'd told her over the phone. I guess I was the bearer of bad news now. He didn't say anything right away, but I could tell he wasn't thrilled, which was understandable. Skylar, however, immediately spoke up. That's ridiculous. Why should we move or get rid of stuff just because Tim is obsessed with cleanliness? My name's Tessa now, she said quietly. I don't think we'll need to move, Douglas replied. Let's try a cleaning service first. And I guess we all could get rid of some things we don't need anymore. I've already started. Moving isn't necessary. I don't like the idea, Kian said, but if Tessa really needs it, I'm okay with it. I'll be moving out soon anyway. Once I'm at college, you won't need so many bedrooms. Having lived for so many years carrying only what I could, I found it hard to relate to their attachment to the house and belongings, but I tried. Skylar and Kian had lived here most of their lives. Their memories were deeply tied to the home and their mother. You need to keep the possibility in mind and get used to it, I said. But it might not be necessary. We need to try other things first, the cleaning service, obviously, and also find someone to teach Tessa meditation and self-hypnosis. That might help control or redirect her compulsions, so she only feels the need to keep her own room clean instead of the entire house. But Dr. Schaefer said meditation takes a long time to master enough to control a twist compulsion, Tessa said. And many people can't control theirs that way. Most, I think. That's true. But it's still worth trying first, even if it's unlikely, because it has the fewest downsides. We'll start looking for someone to teach you on Monday, Taryn said. Later that evening, I asked to speak privately with Taryn, and maybe Douglas. A few minutes later, I was in Douglas's office with both of them. There weren't enough chairs for all of us, so Taryn offered me one, but I stayed standing. There's something else Dr. Schaefer mentioned you should know, I said. It's a last resort, something to consider only if meditation and downsizing don't help, prescription drugs to control twist compulsions. Why are drugs a last resort compared to moving to a smaller house? Douglas asked. That seems simpler. Because of the side effects, I explained, then told them about Ryan. The latest twist compulsion medications have fewer side effects, but Ryan still can't drive or operate machinery because of them. That's not good, Taryn said. Though not being able to drive seems less disabling than some compulsions, like Tessa's. She's too young to drive anyway, Douglas added. And Austin has decent public transit for when she's older. Not being able to drive is just one example, I said. There may be other side effects I can't recall now. We should research any drug regimens Dr. Schaefer recommends before taking his word. And let's not try meds until Tessa has tried meditation for several months without enough progress. They exchanged looks. I'll think about it and do some research, Taryn said. If you find out anything new, let me know. Sure. The next day, Saturday, Emily had to fly back to Atlanta. I arrived at Taryn and Douglas's in time to see her off. She left soon after breakfast. Tell Vic I said hi, I said, hugging her. I might visit sometime in the next month or two if I can. That'd be great. Call us when you're on your way. She turned to Tessa. It's been a fun visit. I wish I could stay for the shopping trip, but airplanes wait for no one. They hugged, and Emily whispered something that made Tessa smile. After Emily left, Tessa said she had to do more cleaning before going shopping. So we scrubbed toilets again, cleared hairs from bathtub drains, swept the kitchen, wiped counters and the table, and loaded and ran the dishwasher. Then Tessa, Taryn, and Skylar went shopping. I offered to help carry packages, but they declined, which was a relief. See you later tonight, I said and left at about the same time, taking a long drive through small towns north and west of Austin, stopping for barbecue lunch and a walk in a park I found. I got back around supper time after calling Tessa to check they were home. After dinner, Tessa showed me some of her new purchases and modeled several outfits while I made approving noises. I was glad she'd adjusted so well to being a girl. She had enough to deal with, just with her compulsion. Sunday morning, Tessa had some basic cleaning to do, and Taryn and I helped. I started feeling more hopeful about her chances in school if she could keep the house clean with just a couple of hours of work daily. Then Douglas, Kian, and I moved some of Tessa's things to the guest bedroom and the rest to the basement, ready for the carpet installers to replace the burnt carpet in her room, scheduled for Monday while everyone was at work or school. I tried convincing Douglas to let Tessa have laminate flooring instead of carpet, but he insisted it had to match the rest of the house. Twisted or not, obsessions come in all forms. She glared at me for a few more moments before grudgingly saying, "Okay, Dad. I'll try. But don't blame me if I end up with D's and F's on all my homework for the next few weeks. Just let me know if you need any help. Maybe it'll be easier to focus if we talk through it together." So we headed to the guest bedroom, where most of her things still were, and started reviewing her homework. A little later, Taryn and Douglas came home from work, and Taryn let Tessa help with dinner. She seemed a bit less distracted by her compulsion while cooking. During supper, I told Taryn and Douglas about Tessa's struggles at school, which led Tessa to reluctantly share more details about what had been happening. "There were kids calling me a twisted freak," she said, eyes fixed on her plate. "Boys called me a sissy, and some girls said I wasn't a real girl, mostly quiet so the teachers wouldn't hear. Some guys, even some I thought were cool, asked really personal questions about what it's like to, Anyway, at first I told them it was none of their business, then I just started ignoring them." "We need to talk to your teachers about this," Taryn said firmly. "Want me to stop by the school tomorrow morning?" I asked. "No, I think I should do it. You've helped a lot lately, but this one's on me." After dinner, Douglas, Kian, and I moved Tessa's furniture back into her room. She wanted to rearrange things to make cleaning easier. We raised her bed and dresser on blocks so she could vacuum underneath, and space the furniture away from the walls to allow cleaning all around. The next morning, Taryn took Tessa to school and spoke with the principal and several teachers about the bullying Tessa had reported. Things improved afterward, Tessa said, though not perfectly. Neil stayed by her side, supporting her, but she'd lost several male friends and wasn't quickly making new ones among the girls like Emily had after her twist. I worried, but there wasn't much I could do then. Once Tessa was somewhat settled, I returned to work and resumed traveling. I messaged my clients that the family crisis was over and that I was available again. Soon, I had more translation jobs than I could handle. I bought a cheap used car, returned my rental, and settled into a routine: drive for a few hours each morning after breakfast, find a motel, translate for a few hours, then move on the next day. Sometimes my travels took me as far as Spiral or Tritsville, but I'd come back to Taryn and Douglas's house every weekend to check on Tessa. By the end of the second week after her twist, Taryn had enrolled Tessa in yoga classes, which seemed to help somewhat. But the techniques Dr. Martinez suggested for turning off her trick when inconvenient hadn't made much difference yet. Her grades were slipping, though not as badly as Tessa or Dr. Schaefer had feared. Douglas hired a cleaning service to come twice a week, but they didn't meet Tessa's exacting standards and didn't save her much time. Still, I think it helped some. Most weekends when I visited, Tessa could catch up on cleaning she'd missed during the week with help from me and usually other family members. Then we'd take short road trips on Sundays. Sometimes Neil joined us. We invited Skylar a few times, but she always declined. One Friday, a few weeks after Tessa's twist, I took her to the clinic to participate in the trick study Dr. Martinez had mentioned. I picked her up from school at lunchtime, and we arrived just in time for her to be scanned, right as Skylar came home from school and started making a mess in the kitchen. The months between spring break and summer vacation passed. Tessa improved at meditation, got better at ignoring her compulsion for a few hours when necessary, and her grades picked up slightly toward the school year's end. One Thursday in May, I called her and she said, "Is it okay if we don't go on a road trip this weekend?" Amber invited me to her birthday party Sunday afternoon, and I told her I might go to the sleepover the night before if I finished cleaning early enough Saturday. "That sounds great, honey." Want me to come by Saturday and help clean like usual? I don't want you to come all this way just to clean, she said anxiously, especially if we won't have time for fun stuff. Maybe we'll plan something extra special the weekend after next, then. I used the longer gap between visits to spend several days in Georgia visiting family in Tritzville, Atlanta, and Milledgeville. I returned to Texas the weekend after the sleepover. It was time to start researching cabins and cottages as a possible temporary home for Tessa and me during summer vacation. I visited several Gulf towns, looking at beach houses for rent, searching for the smallest place with minimal furniture that still had decent beds and seemed livable. Then another idea struck me, and I grew more excited. How flexible was Tessa's trick? We didn't yet know if it could shift focus to a house other than the one where she twisted. Maybe the idea was foolish or premature, but if it worked, it could be perfect, a way to fully satisfy her compulsion and mine, instead of compromising by only partially satisfying either. I resolved to try this first and rent the beach house if it didn't work. On the third day of Tessa's summer vacation, after she'd enjoyed an end-of-school party with Amber and some new friends and caught up on house cleaning, I arrived in Austin to finalize the plans. I parked on the north side of the street and knocked on the door. Kian answered. "Hey, Henry." Tessa's in her room, packing. I stepped inside and past the den where Taryn, Douglas, and Skylar were watching a movie. "Morning, everyone." "Good morning, Henry," Taryn said. "I haven't told Tessa what you have planned. Not sure it's a good idea to surprise her, but I kept it under wraps. We'll see. I have backup plans if this doesn't work. And if those fail, we'll be back here in a few days. Just try to keep things clean for the first few days we're gone, until she shifts her focus to the new place." "I hope it works." Tessa heard me and emerged from her room. "Hi, Dad. Almost ready." "Good. How have you been?" "I passed all my courses this semester, barely scraped by an algebra though." "You'll do better next year. You're improving at managing your compulsion and have the whole summer to work on meditation." After saying goodbye to everyone, we headed out, Tessa pulling one suitcase and me carrying the other. She paused at the top of the porch steps and stared. "I thought you were going to rent a cabin for me to focus my trick on." "We still can if this doesn't work," I said. "But do you think you can focus your trick and compulsion on an RV?" She studied it for a moment, then broke into a wild grin. "I don't see why not. Let's go, Daddy." If you appreciated this story and wish to show your support, don't forget to join me on Patreon for exclusive content.